My name is Lorenzo Ferrari, also known as Shell or Liberty Detachment, depends by where you see my stuff. I'm from Milan, Italy. Nice city actually.
So, who are you? What do you do?
Well, that's a good question actually. I'm basically an artist, that's all, but I do a lot of things in art, like I start from paintings, so fine arts, but also illustration, graphic design, fashion design. But in this case, we're talking about graffiti, so which is actually a great part of my life. It kind of influenced me a lot. There's this artist actually. He's still active in art. His name is Seth. When I was 15, I guess, or something, I was really amazed by his art. Which is street art, of course, and I was just blown away totally from him as a figure and what he did, basically. So I just decided to start myself. I was like, why not? And then the story began, basically.
Where do you usually work?
I usually work on abandoned places. Those places are really a lot charming for me. I think they really belongs to my art, not because of some how can I say, some intricate meaning, but because I really like when you have to find my stuff, when you have to look for it, and a graffiti has to belong to a certain place. You cannot draw, I don't know, you cannot paint Barack Obama onto onto a whatever wall in South Africa, for example. It has to be contextualized. So abandoned places are my top place where to paint, if we talk about graffiti, of course.
Can you explain the whole process on how do you make a graffiti?
Sure. Basically, it all began with an idea. Of course, that's as light as a lot of other things in the world. But let's say that it starts with a sketch. Basically, I have this idea, which is still raw and still, and not born yet, and I want to develop it. So I have a message, which is not yet defined, and from that idea, can be also really simple. Nothing much, developed, but also simple. In some cases developed a lot, and in other cases not. So I have this sketch, and while making the sketch, I look for the place where to paint it, and actually these two elements, which are the main elements, influences each other. So if I find a right place, the sketch is gonna change because the place has to belong to that graffiti. So I'm gonna develop the sketch that I already made on that specific wall. For example, I see this wall which has a particular shape. I'm gonna think with that shape.
Can you tell us about the modern graffiti and compare them with the past ones?
So new school against old school, basically. Yeah. Okay. You gotta know that all the graffiti story and tale and everything started in the 70s, basically. In the 70s. The golden ages was the 70s, was the 80s and the 90s, basically. Making a long story short. So, comparing them, it's quite hard because time has changed a lot. Till the 90s, the early 90s, let's say, early 90s, making graffiti was easier. And when I say easier, I just mean that it was more... there weren't all the cameras and all the police, and most important, there wasn't the Vandal Squad, which is the core of the police, all around the world, has the same name, who are actually looking for graffiti artists. Basically, their only goal is to catch them. So it was different times, and or different places, of course, because old school, it wasn't worldwide. It was just few places, like New York, of course, where all the story began, and a little bit Mexico, South America, and then Bologna in my country, and then all over the world, Paris, of course. So old school was more, old writers were more convinced, they were sure of what they were doing. But nowadays it's more, let's say, mainstream.
what suggestions would you give to new graffiti painters?
I mean, like the noobs, basically, who's taking spray can for the first time. I'd say just try. I mean, these kind of things. You know why I really love street art, because it's. I believe you gotta know that I believe that street art and graffiti. I mean, all the graffitis. I mean, from text to throw ups to street art to flops to everything. I truly believe it's the only art, movement, true art movement in the 21st century. Because if you talk about nowadays art and the end of the 20th century art is just a reproposal of the great masters of the 20th century, like, I don't know, Jackson Pollock, Rothko Kandinsky, this the great master, I don't know, Picasso, these people, of course. And it's all about reproposing this stuff. I mean, not 100%, of course, but the only true new movement is graffiti. It's the only thing which is new, completely new. And I love it because it's completely ruleless. I mean, you don't have rules. And the only aim of a graffiti artist is doing what they are doing, nothing more. And yeah, so just do it. Answering your question, sorry if I, kind of not answered and talked about something else. Just do what you want to do. You have an idea, just do it. Graffiti is all about, my very first, like 5 years ago when I had my very first suggestions in graffiti, this graffiti artist told me, okay, now take the spray can and make 1 point. I did the first point and said, okay, I did it. Now then, do 1 other point over there. I just did the second point. And he said, just line them up, unite them. I said, okay, I'm gonna do that. I did that. And he said, well, basically this is graffiti. It's all based on this, It's all about lines and sprites. It's all easy, simple, because it goes beyond there. It's art and visual art itself, but it goes beyond it because you have a message. For example, even a simple sentence like, I don't know, Shell loves you, for example, which is just a sentence, but it's powerful, Just read this sentence, in the streets, and you somehow you get something, because you are not looking for that. That's the artist's job. Artists make art because they are looking for something that is not yet done. It's not in the real world, and they are looking for this message, this something, by doing art. So that's the artist's job. So when you are not looking for something and you look at street artists, work, you get the real message because, it's instant.